Raul Meza Torres AKA El Mini 6 was one of the youngest hitmen to the Sinaloa Cartel. He and his clan had ruled the drug mafia in Mexico and the world. From gunfights to shady drug deals, from ammunition to deadly shootouts, Raul Meza Torres had seen it all. But what made him the youngest Sicario of one of the largest drug cartels in the world? And what was his unfortunate story? Raul Meza Torres was born into a family of high-ranking members of the Sinaloa Cartel. His father, Raul Meza Ontiveros, was famous for his courage and bravery. He was also a high-ranking leader within the organization. Torres' mother, Ada Elizabeth Torres Felix, was the sister to two other Sinaloa Cartel members. Given his family's ties to the criminal group, it's not surprising that Meza Torres acquired the nickname El Mini 6. In reference to his father's alias, LM6. What is more surprising, however, is that despite his family connections to a criminal and deadly cartel, Meza Torres had no intention of staying out of trouble. In fact, he wanted to be just like his father. Torres also hailed as a role model for his courage, and his friends looked up to him. He participated in cartel meetings from a young age and was often seen on social media with other members of the cartel. Meza Torres' story was an inspiring one for his friends and teenagers who wanted to be just like him, proving that even crime and violence associated with cartel life attracted young blood. Torres was fond of luxuries. He continuously took part in drag races and liked showing off whatever arms and ammunition he had. This means that from a very young age, he was accustomed to these things. Weaponry, for Torres, was like Play-Doh. Seems as if his father had taught him well. The Sinaloa Cartel is spread all over the world, and people from all statures, big and small, work in it. So how did Raul Meza Torres end up being a member? Let us dig into the deeper history of this notorious cartel. In his days with the cartel, Meza Torres roamed around with Rojas Felix, another member of the Sinaloa Cartel. Rojas and Torres became good friends. However, Rojas was introduced to Torres by a high-ranking criminal called El Coronel. El Coronel was one of the founding members of the Sinaloa Cartel. Before joining the Sinaloa Cartel, he used to work with the Juarez Cartel. The police ultimately disseminated the members of the Juarez Cartel and arrested them one by one. El Coronel fortunately got away, then met who would be the most wanted drug lord of the world, Joaquin Guzman, or El Chapo. Together, Coronel and Chapo created a wondrous and dangerous drug mafia called the Sinaloa Cartel. But again, how did the 18-year-old Torres come into the picture? Well, before Torres, there was someone else. This someone else was Torres' inspiration for joining the mafia and becoming a hitman or a Sicario. And this influential person was none other than his father, Raul Meza Ontiveros, or LM6. LM6 had joined the cartel as a hitman, and he was good at it. Ballads were written and sung in his name. While growing up, Torres watched his father being respected in the crime world, and he wanted to have that, like father, like son. Torres joined the cartel when he was just 15. He started posting pictures of him with arms and ammunition. Torres was close to being a full-blown Instagram influencer. Seeing him flaunt his weapons, other children of his age got influenced and started joining the Sinaloa Cartel. Gradually, Torres started becoming famous. Like his father, he was now called El Mini 6. But wait, there's something else in common between El Mini 6 and El Coronel, the founding member of the Sinaloa Cartel. They both had suffered a similar fate. El Coronel was also killed in a confrontation. However, this was a confrontation with the Mexican army. It was the 29th of July, 2010. The Mexican army organized a surprise raid on El Coronel's house in Zapopan, Jalisco, the same town where Torres had been shot. Just like Torres, Coronel also shot one army officer and wounded another. Eventually, Coronel was shot mortally during the raid and pronounced dead on the same day, just like El Mini 6. According to the residing attorney general in those times, the Mexican army soldiers seized jewelry, luxury watches, guns, 2 hand grenades, 3 vehicles, and $7 million in cash from the house where Coronel died. Seems like all members of the cartel suffered from the same fate, right? But this was not how Torres' father died. And details about his father's death also give us a glance at why Torres has decided to join the cartel. Was this because of teenage adrenaline rush, or was it because of a stern sense of revenge? Let's find out. The premise of Torres' father's death is not yet clear, and the authorities have refused to put light on the issue for a long time. One account says that Torres' father was dropping off his girlfriend in another neighborhood when he confronted several armed men. And what came next was a heinous murder and a source of lifelong pain for Torres' family. On the 27th of March 2007, Torres' father, LM6, went to the Las Quintas neighborhood where several armed men were waiting for him already. He was in the middle of a shootout as he reached. LM6 was shot point blank. But wait, the point blank was a coup de grace, meaning that it was only the last shot that had been made to kill M6. The autopsy reports revealed that Meza Torres' dear father was tortured and harmed in a lot of ways before he was shot point blank. There were 3 wounds on his skull, and the doctor said that they were made by a sharp object. Other than this, there were also several wounds on his body, so Meza Torres' father may have been beaten up a lot before he was actually killed. When the police went for further investigation into the Torres family house, they were denied entry. Gradually, the case was closed and it still remains an enigma. But surely, Meza Torres may have been inspired by this incident to follow in his father's footsteps and take revenge. Coming back to Meza Torres' death, was this the first time that Meza Torres AKA El Mini 6 was caught or confronted by the police? Of course not. Only a few months had gone by after his father's death when Meza Torres found himself in another police confrontation. Torres was stopped by the police in the same neighborhood where his father was brutally murdered, Las Quintas. Torres, with 2 of his friends, was driving an armed vehicle without papers and license plates. Torres was even carrying a fake ID. This gave Torres more freedom to exercise his family's and the Sinaloa Cartel's power. 2 years later after this incident, the transit police caught Torres and his group drag racing. When the police ordered the 2 vehicles to stop, Torres and his gang began shooting at the police officers. What began as just a fun drag racing exercise for teenagers now turned into a full-blown shootout. Torres and his gang injured a police officer and fled the scene. When the higher authorities arrived, they found out that the license plate on Torres' vehicle was a stolen one. On April 25, 2010, the young Raul Meza Torres was roaming around the town of Zopapan with his friend Rojas Felix when the police caught them on the signal for a regular search of their vehicles. But to the police's surprise, they found out that the 2 teenagers belonged to the notorious Sinaloa Cartel. As tensions started to rise between the police and the youngsters, the police discovered that the 2 men were also carrying arms. The routine search of the vehicles now turned into a grim case of criminal activities. As soon as the police started searching, the 2 men started flaunting guns. The police were now scared, but they had arms too. The 2 men now came out of their vehicles. The police were shocked to see both men were from the famous Sinaloa Cartel. One of them was the son of the Valores and brutal hitman, Raul Meza Torres. Yes, the 18-year-old Raul Meza Torres now stood in front of the police officers, mocking them by shooting bullets in the air. One of the police officers, Jaime Vicente Morales Dominguez, tried to calm the situation down, but Meza Torres, being an efficient and fearless hitman like his father, shot him in the head. Another officer, Jose Luis Monroy, tried to help his fellow officer but met with 3 gunshot wounds in the thorax, hand, and legs. Ayas, Jose Luis Monroy shot Meza Torres fatally when his friend from the cartel fled. But this was not the first time when Torres had confronted the police. As we go ahead, we'll look into the other adrenaline-filled rages of Meza Torres that led him to become a deadly hitman. Now, why would the other flee away? Why didn't he save his friend? That is yet to be found out. Meza Torres eventually died in the hospital, while the police caught a hold of his friend. At the scene, the police officers confiscated a .38 Super and 9mm handguns, 22 rounds of ammunition, and 2 cartridges. The man who fled away was Torres' good friend, Rojas Felix. Who were these people, and why were they carrying armaments? The police found out that these men worked for the Sinaloa Cartel, the largest drug-selling cartel in the world. But the police were still confused. The men don't look like seasoned criminals. In fact, they look like they're in school. While searching for their IDs, the police discovered that Meza Torres was just 18. But the case was not yet over. The death of Meza Torres raised more questions than it answered. Mexican authorities arrested Rojas Felix in Zopapan, Jalisco, in connection with the killing of 2 federal policemen. Prosecutors alleged that Rojas Felix, a high-ranking member of the Sinaloa drug cartel, ordered the murders. Rojas Felix had long been a controversial figure in Mexico. He was hand-in-hand with Torres when they drove in stolen cars or carried drugs and ammunition. Now, Rojas Felix faced much more severe charges. If convicted, he would have faced up to 50 years in prison. The murders of the 2 federal policemen took place in Jalisco, which was also the home base of the Sinaloa drug cartel. The authorities allege that Rojas Felix ordered the hit on the policemen because they were getting too close to his operations, but Rojas Felix had maintained his innocence, claiming that he was not even aware that the policemen were going to be killed. He said that he was in town to visit family members and had no involvement in the murders. However, the authorities had evidence that Rojas Felix communicated with Torres all throughout the shootout. They also alleged that he was armed and attempted to flee the scene when the policemen were killed. Eventually, Felix even betrayed his friend Torres and said in front of the court that he didn't even know Raul Meza Torres. Seems like even friendships don't last long when you're a member of the Sinaloa Cartel. All these events and several more motivated Meza Torres, aka El Mini 6, to be a dangerous Sicario just like his father. But what was different was that Torres made himself famous not only among the brutal neighborhoods of Zopapan and Las Quintas, but also in the influential ocean of social media. Several of his photos had gone viral on social media platforms where he posed with different murderous weapons. As his image elated the Sinaloa Cartel, he was also able to recruit young members into the cartel with his heavy social media presence. Although Torres had managed to come out of many brutal shootouts, eventually fate ditched him and was killed in a shootout during a regular vehicle check. El Mini 6's legacy has been stored in several narco-corridos or drug ballads that musicians made for him and his courageous persona. One of the musicians was Torres' longtime friend, Jesus Ariel Perez. They remembered his military uniform, his courageous stance against the police, his firearms, and several other menacing things. This was the threatening but sad story of the world's youngest hitman, Raul Meza Torres, aka El Mini 6.